AI is rapidly shifting how we organize and work. But if we want a human-centered future, we can't just react to technology. We are all agents in shaping change. Let's help technology and talent work better together. There's kind of like two ways of looking at technology. Technology as like technology we use, and technology that, how should I put it? As a function of HR. HR uses technology to do HR activities, for example, applicant tracking, or HR deploys or somehow participates in the rollout of technology that changes the way work is done in the firm. It's not necessarily technology that HR's budget or HR's mandate is to manage, say like project management software. It's HR is responsible for helping to design the jobs, and in the ideal state, if you're heavy on workforce planning and you have a lot of oversight into job crafting and job design and process and work design, they're actually helping to figure out where software is used and how incorporating ERPs and project management software actually changes the way work is done, the number of people that's needed, what those people specialize in, that sort of thing. And so there's a question about adopting AI on both those levels. Like, should we be using AI to help do our work as HR professionals better, more efficiently, like answering policy questions or cleaning up skills models, that sort of thing, or how does AI affect the type of work activities that our workforces do? And how does that collaboration between talent and tech change the way work is done, and then change the job descriptions, the kind of roles that we need to open, the kind of skills that those roles need to have, the kind of training that we need to do, and so on. So we need to be versed in AI on both levels, both the AI that we use to do our work and the AI that any other function or a part of the organization, business unit might use, and how that changes the nature of the workforce.
Yeah, I love that. That makes sense to me, because there's two things, right? There's, as a function, the HR roles and responsibilities, and how AI and technology factors into that. And then there's also, as a function, a shared service function that supports the organization, there's also all these ways that technology and AI are being used and will be used in workflow. Whether you're in sales, whether you're in product, whether you're in legal, and HR professionals thinking about the future of work and talent implications actually have to be versed in that too. So, but breaking those two apart and differentiating that there are two things going on here, and making it really clear to folks that let's differentiate so it doesn't get even more confusing is a valid question.
I'm just acknowledging that we have to actually, when it comes to being expert at technology, actually it's not obvious to me historically how expert HR felt they needed to be in, say, adopting an ERP system. Like, outside of the HRIS components or modules, did they feel that they needed to understand the inner workings of, say, Slack or Asana or Salesforce? How critical, in your experience, how critical has it been for HR people to like get into the details of that to understand like what their salespeople are doing and whether or not they're able to do those activities well through one platform or another, or how the platforms augment or change the nature of the work that they're able to do? Yeah. Does that happen pretty often? I assume it does, but could be wrong.
Not as much as it historically could have, and I would argue should have. So I'll give you the example of big HRIS system that many people use, and getting deep into implementations with that system over the last 15 years. Myself as a lead for one of the first integrations 15 years ago for a company, and then beyond, using it for three different companies. What I saw was that I had a level of understanding of the design that enabled me to understand what it could and couldn't do from a limitation perspective, and accelerate some of the collaboration and customization that you could do. And because I had that knowledge of the inner workings of the design and the configuration, I could make it more powerful and make it more user friendly for our expectations and outcomes that we wanted. And
Right.
a great example is going into another company after having the first experience, and my developer saying you can't do that, and I'm saying you can do that. We just haven't learned how to do that yet. And so that's a great example of like why it does matter these days to understand the user experience and the logic and the design behind things, so then you can, as an HR professional, co-create the future design. And then if it needs to change, you can evolve it because you've been involved in the process of the design, so you know how it works. You're not just a user on the front end. You understand the back end that powers that. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I was just thinking about other examples, like in software engineering, like the equivalent of a collaboration tool is a Git, where you store all of your software. When you push code, it connects up to other people's code that other people are writing elsewhere. You can pull their code, change it, put it back. You can have multiple versions that can then be automatically integrated back together. All of these um, features have allowed people to collaborate increasingly remotely, increasingly asynchronously, to manage version control better so people aren't getting in each other's way. And so that enables people to specialize in specific areas without having to take things beginning to end. They can focus on, say, testing particular aspects or building out particular functions. That technology has changed what it means to be an engineer, what kind of specialization is important, what collaboration looks like. It's changed the expectations for hiring. Obviously, the manager of that work is kind of really optimizing how that work gets done on a day-to-day level. But I don't know if the manager or HR, is necessarily an expert in like all the technology that can help get work done.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
where does the HR business partner play? Are they there to ask questions of the manager, frontline manager, about what they need just for hiring and for dealing with compensation? Or are they actually there to say like, hey, this is the technology that's available now to, say, manage teamwork at a higher level, that's used in some other firms? Should we start thinking about a different team design, different workflows? How into the detail should those HR business partners be? I know we can get caught up in like the normal recruiting, compliance, compensation aspects, but technology is playing, not just facilitating those things, but actually facilitating the nature of the work that we do. And I think AI is making that super obvious. We're
Yeah,
talking about deep
yeah.
collaboration with people, potentially even replacing some tasks. So we're really looking deeper into the actual, like, how is work getting done? Where's the
I think
HR business partner playing in that?
yeah, I mean, it's really smart to break it down into different sub functions of HR. And historically, my experience having been an HR business partner and worked with many,
You
many,
have?
many.
How
Oh
do you
yeah,
have
oh
that?
yeah, yeah. I think if you're going to be effective as a leader in a function, it's important to play the different roles, right? And so I built trust and credibility by doing the role and understanding it and walking in those shoes.
Mm,
And so, from my experience, the HR business partner is really the eyes and the ears, and has kind of the on the ground view and perspectives and data from the internal clients of what's going on, what's working, what's not working. And so, in my mind, they would be bringing that data back to the HR leadership team or their respective areas of HR to then make sense of what are we going to do with it
mm,
in terms of opportunities for value creation. And then obviously AI and technology could be part of the workflow reimagination process.
yeah.
And HRBPs would definitely be a stakeholder as well as the people from the business. But I think you know being really clear on role clarity for different parts of HR is important. And I think my recommendation for all HR professionals is let's think of competency in like levels of or skill or understanding of levels from 1 to 5, one being basic. What I'm
Mm,
saying is I think all HR professionals should have a level 1 or level 2 understanding and competency in AI and how it works and how it can work
mm,
with you and how it can complement you. So as you think about work design and you think about your role in creating value for the business, you have that ability um, to have competence and context. So I'll give you an example of like traveling to a country and trying to communicate, but not knowing the language. So you're
mm,
walking around and trying to find out where the bathroom is, or how to get a train ticket, or how to order food, and you can't do it because you don't have that basic level of language proficiency where it's like it would take you learn 20 words or 30 words to be able to communicate. And then there's the person who's fluent that can just navigate through the system really quickly and get things done. And there's actually like a grace and an ease, and you can see it. That
Yeah.
would probably be level 5. Um,
Mm.
and so what I'm saying is basics are needed and foundational for the HR profession to be successful and relevant. And some people want to learn more and need to learn more, and some people won't. But I think it's something that is important for us to debate and to talk about. And those are just my thoughts on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Would you say that I think that level one, level two framing is useful, and what that gives you is an understanding of what things are and what they do, possibly also how they can help the organization, and also what you brought up in the beginning is like what an HR business partner probably needs to spend their time on is what's working, what's not working, and could it be better? And the answer to the could it be better could be optimization, could it be more efficient, faster, higher quality? But it might also be human centered. Could people be happier or more satisfied with this work? Could we reduce burnout? Could we align more with people's potential? So there's both sides of that equation, and they might come up with an answer that AI could play a role as long as they understand what AI is actually able to bring to the table.
That's right.
So it makes sense to familiarize yourself with those products and understand what they do. Part of me is wondering is, do we think that HR business partners already have a level one, level two understanding of the workers and their work in their domain? So you would assume that a technical HR business partner would have level three or level four understanding probably of software development,
Mm.
but only a level one, level two for what AI is actually doing. Is that enough? Um, do we think of these things as tools and we kind of have a limited understanding, and the experts are actually the dev managers or the frontline manager of whatever the group is? Or do we think of these things as almost another type of worker, and we need to actually have as much understanding of how they work as we would, say, a software engineer or a marketer, whoever are the workers in the function that we're managing?
Yeah,
That's kind of
it's
an
an
open
interesting.
question for me.
Yeah, it's a really good one. And again, we're playing in a really evolving, new, fresh, exciting, complex space. So let's riff on it in a minute. Look, what's happened in my experience is when there's a capability that isn't core to a job. And we're talking about HRBPs, but let's just say change management or project management. Typically,
Right.
what has happened is sub functions are created. So you have a PMO, project management office, or you have a change management team, right? That specializes just in those two things, because those two things, while connected as well, are critical to organizational effectiveness and success, right?
Mhm.
I would argue that right now AI is one of those things that like will be critical to the success and the value creation for businesses and talent. And so, do we build sub functions that are AI experts that the HRBP could say, here's what I'm seeing and hearing and observing, and from an AI perspective, put up what's your view on how to solve for that, and have a conversation. That's one way of doing it. Um, and to be able to do that, I think you still would it would be helpful to have that level one or level two competency of so you can interact with those AI specialists. So I'm not
Right.
sure which way. It's kind of like you could do it either way. You could continue to build the depth of the HRBP in this example, or you could go to the sub function. Um, but again, I think table stakes will be education for all. And I think where the sweet spot is like this idea that like let's co-create, right? Let's design together. And my experience of early day bots and other things in organizations, we're talking 50, 60, 70,000 people, sometimes 100,000 people organizations, is, bots came out, everybody was really excited. They put the bots out there and they were ineffective because the change management and the human centered design was missing.
Mm.
So the bot actually wasn't able to do what it was intended to do. And I would say that the reasoning behind that was there wasn't the human centered design. People weren't brought into the front end to really think about how this will complement the work. And I think
Right.
now we're in a different place, but the principles are still the same. Let's make sure that HR professionals and others are in the design experience of how this technology and the talent will integrate. What are your thoughts on that? And like, I know you've done a lot of design work in Silicon Valley and other places.
Mhm.
But what are your views on like on human-centered design and technology together? Because it's kind of a paradox. Wait, like you want us to incorporate this technology and you want it to be human-centered. So yeah.
Human-centered design, like very a small bit of background is sort of it came out of anthropology and um, what we'd call industrial design, which is like making of physical objects. And sort of anthropologists, applied anthropologists went out, studied the world, understood people, and then talked to the designers about how that understanding of people could change the way people interact with something or what they would find appealing versus not appealing. And then, of course, because a lot of our objects these days are digital, it also has brought in technology. So you have technology, you have sort of humanists, and you have designers or the making of things mixing together, trying to understand what is the most ideal object. And then if you start to scale that up into more complicated systems, um, you start to actually apply human-centered design to organizations as a whole. So you're not just designing the project or the object, but you're designing, say, the ecosystem. So the sales process, the customer experience. You're not just designing the sales process or customer experience, you're also designing the supply chain, the network of companies. Within a company, it's the business process. You're designing the relationships between people in the organization, how they collaborate, why, what the outcomes would be. So human-centered design is sort of a generic process for sort of the thoughtful, empathy-driven approach to making of things.
Mm,
In terms of how it applies to change management, a lot of times what happens, people invent new technologies with a particular need in mind that it's solving, and that need may or may not be solved by that technology. Let's say that it is. It People still have other problems getting in the way of that. Say like existing ways of doing things that they don't want to change. They have a status quo bias, or they have other functions that they need to deal with who don't have the same interest in whatever this new software is or product is. So many things get in the way of actually adopting new technology. And it's not just does it do that one particular task well, it's how does it fit into the network of activities happening inside the organization. So yeah, so that's kind of how human-centered design is playing a role. And
yeah.
I would say that there's this old theory called socio-technical systems theory, which is this idea that all organizations are actually a mix of technology and people. That's what the theory says. And so the optimal organization is coming up with the optimal mix of technology and people and the right design of those interactions to make the organization work. And so sometimes as HR professionals, we get really focused on the people part, but we're not necessarily thinking of what's the optimal relationship with technology and the optimal amount of technology to use to make the best organization. So perhaps if we're going to apply human-centered organizational design to incorporating technology, it's kind of bringing in that idea that the organization includes technology. It's not just the people working together, but it's the people working with tech working with tech, and humans working with humans all together. And we actually have to think about all those relationships and sort of pick and choose the best options for our culture.
That's right. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
interesting because a lot of my work has been in large organizations where collaboration is really critical to success, not just between people, but also, as you say, like technology. People are all over the different parts of the world, Boston, Bangkok, Beijing. And like,
Mm,
how do you get people collaborating? How do you get talent and technology collaborating? And speed oftentimes is the enemy of alignment. And so you get all
mm,
these silos that are created, right?
mm,
Um, and this opportunity to stop and redesign and iterate and say this isn't working. It's sub-optimized. So
right.
let's stop and co-create a new way or a new process, a new workflow is so important. But we actually
We
sometimes
don't have
just
time.
yeah, we're gonna bear it. Oh, we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
And I'll also just say like the amounts of waste of investments of financial resources on technology that doesn't work because it wasn't co-created in a way that keeps in mind the different stakeholders, right, and the different workflows that are needed across cultures and time zones is really